This is Project Preservation's 13th year running, so it's our B'nai Mitzvah year. My name is Leah Feiger. I just graduated from Dartmouth College. I have been the trip leader and trip coordinator for Project Preservation for the past 2 years. It was really like the brainchild of Rabbi Boras. He realized that there were all of these Jewish cemeteries across Eastern Europe in complete states of disrepair. We go in and scrub these cemeteries and clean them and clear them out and create a virtual online cemetery to help people find their connections to this life in Eastern Europe that so many feel entirely disconnected from.
It's an experience to nurture the heart, our human sensitivity, to give meaning and substance to the term never again. Every year is a remarkable group of young men and women. What you don't read about in Dartmouth, what doesn't get published in the New York Times, but this is the best of what Dartmouth brings, I think.
This group is incredible. I have to say, when we started out, when we had our first session together at Dartmouth, I looked around, I didn't really know anybody. I think the main reason this group has worked out so well was that nobody's doing it superficially. Everybody's 110% in. Whether they had a personal connection before or not, they do have it now. That's been the most important and uplifting part.
Really, I think back to the quote, an injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. I think about, though I'm not a Jew, that this is still a tragedy for humanity.
I'm African American. My father is from Jamaica. He's the son of natives and former slaves. My mother is from the South. She's the daughter of former slaves and Native Americans. But hard for me to know that because of what people did, I'll never have a history to trace back. I can never go back and look at this. If for some reason, I can find the bottom of the ocean, I can start to find the slaves that have fallen off the ship and I could start to identify them. I would want someone to do that, just the same as I can go and find these tombstones.
In the very beginning of the trip, we go to Auschwitz, we go to Belzec, and the reason that we do that is it provides kind of a backdrop for our cemetery work. That is to say, understanding that the lives taken in the Holocaust would be here to repair the cemeteries, would be here to care for their ancestors, would be here to later be naturally buried in the cemeteries. It really demonstrates how the natural order was disrupted.
The experience of going to Auschwitz was interesting in the sense that I've learned about Auschwitz my entire life. You can read about it and you can get a sense of a lot of the atrocities. You can meet the survivors, people who have survived Auschwitz. But there's something unique about going there. And I think for me, the best word I can use to describe it was expansive. Auschwitz-Birkenau was so large in just terms of the physical space that as you're looking at it, it just seems to go on and on and on.
At Auschwitz, it's like this huge green meadow, and I was so bothered that there could be any life and anything redeeming in this absolutely awful place.
I felt this fear, but moreover, it was this feeling of being stuck.
I felt claustrophobic. I just felt trapped.
I remember looking at that rail track right outside Auschwitz-Birkenau, and it just ended, and I felt stuck. And I remember telling Leah this, and it was it's like not being Jewish, not having any really connection to the Holocaust. I didn't expect to ever be scared, but at that moment I was.
If I felt claustrophobic at Auschwitz, I definitely felt way more claustrophobic at Belzec. I think that the way it was set up resonated more with me. I felt more alone there. I felt more like I was sort of marching in the same path that these people were marching before. And sort of like when I looked back, there was no way out.
The biggest thing for me was Belzec. Really just how it was just one straight path, and you know, different than the concentration camps where maybe you got sorted into different groups, but the way that they just walked you straight down into the death camp.
It's one thing to be at Auschwitz and to see such an expansive complex and be told 1.1 million victims over the course of a little over a year. But to come to Belzec to see this camp where there's really nothing to see, where it just looks like a barren wasteland, and you're just told that there are about 500,000 people that were killed there. I really came into the cemetery really eager to get started. For me, it wasn't the first time I'd been to a concentration camp, but I had a sense of what to expect from there, and I think the real reason I came on this trip was to preserve a memory of people. My mindset on day one was that I really needed to get started. I think I was able to almost compartmentalize as I was doing the work. That the only thing I thought about was that we have all of these gravestones, many of them aren't cleaned, a lot of them are completely covered. We have only 4 days to do it, and we need to get to work, and like, here's how we're going to break it up and go.
Lutowiska was one of the places that we had looked at a few years ago. A lot depends on the condition of the cemetery. Is it a cemetery that's in need of repair? Does it have stones for us to really photograph, transcribe? Can we actually work in the cemetery? Are we walking by the town? We have done 3 previous ones in this region, and so this was a logical choice for us.
I think it was hard for me to see all of the stones that were knocked down. I remember tripping over a stone when I was walking because I didn't expect it to be covered in grass and stuff. It was definitely a little bit of a shock for me, and it motivated me a little bit because I knew that we could help and we could do something to make it better.
One of the most rewarding things about it is getting attached to a stone, and so me and Michelle, once we found out their names, we would refer to them by their names.
Some very wonderful, surprising things on various headstones that have been just a delight to read and to translate. It seems to have been a very thriving Jewish community here. The ruins of the synagogue are still up the street, not very far from here. If one went to the website and looked up the town, they would see it had a population, if I'm not mistaken, of about 2,000 Jews right before World War II. Tragically, the majority of them were slaughtered, according to one story, on a hill behind the church. The Nazis came in about 1941 or 42 here. In 1942, I believe, that was when the mass killing took place. And the remainder of the individuals were sent to Sanok, and from Sanok there was a holding camp where they went to Belzec, which is a death camp.
This is painful. Like, parts of it are really beautiful and moving and celebratory. Auschwitz is not. It is painful. Getting really close with a stone, that's painful. Parts of this are hard. And in the way in which we've all chosen to bear witness individually and then collectively is different than most of my experiences prior.
Honestly, I'm surprised by how strong everyone has been through this trip. Because, like, of course we've seen you like cry, break down, whatever, like all of these things have been there, but we've also seen just this happiness and celebration and just like a very genuine joy in that in a way sort of is like the biggest thing that we can do to preserve memory, I think, is to like celebrate, at least in a collective form. We're embracing like the lives of people before us, but also like our lives and our families and people who are still here.
On the internet, it said that there were about 100 headstones. Cleaning up the cemetery as we have done, removing all the overgrowth. The cemetery is much bigger than what we had imagined. We have already documented over 400 headstones. Well over 400 now. Probably closer to 5. On the majority of stones, the things these people valued was to live a morally upright life, to lead a ritually fit life, a kshera, to give to the poor is something that was universal, both on male headstones that we've seen and on women headstones.
It was really exciting to discover all of these new stones and to know and to hear that like some of them might actually be able to already start connecting people with their histories. And so every time we found one that was like hidden off behind the trees or in some obscure place where it like never seemed like there might be a stone, it was really, really exciting, especially when there's actually text that we could read on it.
When we got here, there were a lot of stones, and then there turned out to be so many more. There was this stone that was kind of obscured by a tree, and so I went in and cut a lot of the branches off this tree and kind of removed most of this tree to clear this one stone. And as I was finishing that, I noticed really right underneath the tree was a stone that I wasn't even aware was there. Seeing it for the first time, and I don't know how long it's been buried, but it ended up being kind of the most meaningful stone to me because it had been completely buried under this tree. And throughout this trip, we've just continued, as we've taken more trees out and more brush out, the stones just keep growing.
One that we uncovered today, actually, which was really fascinating, was a man who donated the money for the Holy Ark in the synagogue. That what he wanted to be remembered by was the man that made this magnificent donation. Now, in 2014, the Ark is probably long gone. We're not sure that his legacy will be preserved, but the fact that was what was so important and dear to him, of being a good person and helping his community out, is what's still preserved. And it's inspiring to see this as like what these core values to these ancestors of mine.
I'm not Jewish, so I didn't know that much about the culture before, and this trip has really helped me understand how rich of a culture you guys have. Learning the Hebrew alphabet from Jake, or just like hearing the translations of some of these stones and going to the synagogue. It was just so cool to know that there's still a memory to be remembered and to know that we're remembering.
I didn't understand why the cemetery mattered. I didn't expect the stories that I heard from other people here who have Jewish descent to be able to personalize the cemetery in the way that it is to me, to make me so passionate to want to work in it.
One of the qualities of this trip that has really stood out to me has been resilience. Sort of the resilience of the Jewish people and the Jewish culture, but also the resilience of people in everyday lives. It's been a lot of highs and lows, but most importantly, it's been a lot of just resilient actions, just getting up every morning and doing it again, even though the last day it completely broke you down.
I think back to 6th grade and when we had an event and where they said dress up as the country where your ancestors are from, and I talked to my mom and she said, we don't know, just pick a country in Africa, and so it was easy then, but I think as I grow older and more knowledgeable, I think I'd like to know where I'm from. This trip excites me to search, to find my own origins.
I'm taking away a new awareness of genocide and the importance of talking about it and learning about it. This answer I want to try to find moving forward is, how do I start making a difference other than just kind of patting myself on the back for the work we've done here, but actually moving forward and doing more.
When we talk about genocide, when we talk about the Holocaust, we're not talking about numbers or statistics. For me, what project preservation has done was kind of put these numbers into perspective and help me find the personal ties to these numbers.
Hands-on projects are just very important, and I've learned so much more than I could ever learn from a book or a teacher lecturing.
One can study about the Holocaust, the Shoah, as I've done before I ever began this trip, and have an intellectual understanding, even an emotional understanding of the enormity of the suffering. But you really experience it when you come to these places like Lutowiska, which is real, and you see the headstones in the Hebrew, and you see the descriptions of Jewish life. I mean, it changes you profoundly.
It's a needed trip. I feel like people just need to come here. They need to learn about such a significant part of history. I just feel like this is a trip that no other trip can compare to this trip.